Good to have you all here. Small group, and we can enable this conversation. We're going to talk a little bit about what we're doing over there in Mexico, see if for you, has sense, makes sense. And basically, we're here because we know procurement doesn't work for all. So that's our pinpoint to start from here. I'm a software developer, and before coming into the civic tech movement, the companies I've worked with before, they would rather do a bunch of different work rather than get involved at first in the civic tech space. For software companies or tech companies, sometimes is not the first focus area, because for a lot of companies and small companies, get involved with the public sector or organizations that work in this sector is work with them could mean that for them they would either one contract could be either fixed, or they will have to know someone really important to get to that, or they don't want to just get into all the bureaucracy that it means. So sometimes these kind of projects are more suited to the companies that normally have like 5 managers and just one developer, instead of like small companies that are completely focused on building stuff. And we want to approach to those kind of teams, small, great teams that move fast and build with great practices and build in the open. So we're here to discuss procurement and how to make it more effective for those kind of teams and to involve them. And we're going to talk a little bit about that here. So a little bit about us, Codeando Mexico. Oscar and I work for Codeando Mexico. We started Codeando Mexico around 2012. And for us, we have been working a ton with communities and involving more technologies here in Mexico. Codeando Mexico sometimes is called Code for Mexico because we're part of the Code for All movement, which is like-minded organizations with Code for America. And for us, bring developers and more geeks to work together with different communities on different subjects is really important. But when we work with civil society, it makes a lot of sense to bring these kind of developers. But when we work with government, it's not about just fellowships or brigades. It's not about just community programs. It's about how we put as well the budget on where these developers are working. So, sorry. A little story, and before telling a little story, we know how the government allocates a bunch of and a lot of budget in procurement. In IT, the federal government in Mexico last year spent just around 30 billion Mexican pesos, which is around 2 billion pesos. From that, the 80% went on maintenance services. Here in the U.S., just in the U.S. only, the different state and municipal governments spend around $6 trillion in procuring IT. But we need to put a little bit of interest in how that process is designed for small companies to participate on. Here in the U.S., the Healthcare.gov project was a trigger for starting initiatives like the USDS and the 18F, and get more developers and teams to deliver technology. But what about the teams, the small companies and the startups that are outside of government that are really important for them, that are creating value, they don't deliver services from within? How do we make this work for them as well? So in Mexico, that story and that trigger story for us is, sorry, was getting used to the clicker. Let me tell you the story. In Mexico, what triggered that, there wasn't the Healthcare.gov thing here, but in Mexico, there was right now 7 $0.5 million. At that time, it was $9 million. And for an iOS app that could track the activity within the Congress. And the only users were going to be congressmen. So this is a bunch of money. This was a bunch of money for a contract that would last 3 years and will serve only to the people within the Congress. What about the citizens? So what we thought, and we were really thinking on if we should like start complaining or build this on ourselves. So what we did was actually not just build that ourselves, but to call for the country and the developers around the country to build the same applications, the open source version of that application, and where we're going to give them the 0.01% of that contract and an iPad mini, just to sound a little cooler. So we got developers from around the country in just 10 days to build 6 applications, and we're using open source, scraping the content. The first thing, then the next day we call out for the challenge. We got an API for all the data, and given all the noise around the media, the Congress invited us to present the applications and invite the developers to present within the Congress. There were a bunch of media around this. And the sad thing about this was we didn't stop the contract. And the bad thing about that is that we didn't lose that battle because that was actually the trigger for us to think, okay, if they're using us as a political speech, are they going to continue to call out for hackathons? Are they going to continue to say that they want to contribute with the developer community, but instead spend on their budget and giving the contracts to the same ones? So for us, this was finding a community that can actually want and that want to participate in these kind of issues. But there's actually no easy ways for them to participate. And there were around 150 developers that signed up for the project. I mentioned 6 applications, but for us, this was the start of the movement for Codeando Mexico. And we started working nationally in different cities using web technologies that will help us enable more developers to work with this sector. But for us, it was really important to get the government involved in this. And how can we actually change the way they procure for that? And so we started, this actually has to be first. Retos Públicos appears. And Retos Públicos is a program designed and in a form of an app challenge and the way that developers like to work, but it's actually a procurement model for government agencies. And right now we have worked with agencies in different agencies from the federal government. And this works in the way that small teams and startups work. This works in the way that they will like to build something, not actually instead of filling a 100-page filling form, they will actually build mockups and prototypes before getting into all the bureaucracy that it means. So this makes more attractive and how to do it. And we started working this with the Office of the President and the National Digital Strategy in Mexico, with actually international collaboration with USAID, to build this model in Mexico. And even there's an OGP commitment for this, but we want to actually test how it works, and we have been doing that in Mexico. And I want Oscar to tell you how it works and how we would like to see it could work in other countries.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a very simple. Okay. There. Okay. It's a very simple scheme. It basically launch a call for proposals. It would be an RFP. But what we do is we say we work with the ministries and say, okay, you have a problem. You probably need technology to solve it. But don't write tech specs. Just say what you want to achieve. We'll let the community work on that. And then we set a limit. So only startups or individuals that make less than 4 million pesos, like 250,000 a year, can participate. And so we gather all their ideas. They send a couple mock-ups, Gantt charts to know how long it'll take to actually develop their solution. And all of these ideas are evaluated. We select 5 finalists, and those 5 finalists have to develop a prototype. So the agency gets 5 working prototypes, open source working prototypes, to choose from. And those finalists also get some support for their work, because we don't want it to be like free working, and even if you don't win, then you get nothing. And the winner gets a contract. So this sounds fantastic. It's actually quite cool, because we'll get to the numbers soon, but we've found companies from all across the country, from the smallest towns where you wouldn't imagine there are like cool companies doing stuff and that are willing to work with government to build solutions for the people. So we have had 10 contests till now with 5 federal ministries, more than 1,700 participants. That's individuals, which means 330 companies that have built 50 prototypes. All of these are on GitHub, so if you ever feel like checking them out and maybe forking them for your own city, that would be fantastic and a success story for everyone. You can check the webpage. It's retos.gov.mx, and you can find the 10 challenges there. Well, there are actually 11, because there's one going on right now. We're in a prototype phase. We have the Q&A session tomorrow, because what we do is we engage the companies to talk to the ministries. Like if they have any doubts about the data they have to use, or if there's a web service, or if there's specific guidelines on how to build what they want to build, we make them talk, so that on one side, the companies see that, I mean, government are people, government is made by people. So like putting a face on government, and also making government see that they can buy technology in a different way, right? And they can actually say like what they need before it's released, right? And that it doesn't mean a new contract or more paperwork. Like you can just call them and say, hey, we would like to have this. So this means civic hacking can be cool and sustainable, which has taught us that small companies, like the more we bring companies into this ecosystem, the more sustainable it'll be. In Latin America, we have this sense that civic stuff shouldn't be for profit, right? For some reason, I won't discuss the art culture because this is not the subject, but we're figuring out how to actually make this something healthier and not depend on grants or not depend on external money, but how can we help all these companies be sustainable by themselves? And so, this all sounds amazing, but what has actually happened after the challenges? So, we found out that ministries didn't know how to adapt to this model. They still had to go through the same process as if they just made an RFP and the whole tendering process. And it's taken, like the first challenge was launched in June of last year, and they still haven't finished the contract.
And one thing I want to add to that is exactly that. Project management for them means a bunch of documents to actually start to work with the project. They don't know what to do with those prototypes and mock-ups. So it's really interesting to see how this becomes a way to start and trigger the way they manage the products, the tech projects within the government.
The second one. Sorry. The second one is the communication we had as an NGO with the government partners wasn't direct. We had a contact inside the president's office who had to work as a bridge between us, and so that lack of communication led to a lot of misunderstandings about the reach of the contracts, about the development times, etc. The third one was government times with budgets are really complicated. So even though we launched the first challenges during summer last year, we found out that we should have got the budget for that a year before, but we didn't have a project back then. So we had to wait a year till February this year to ask for the money so that we could actually have the resources to pay for the contracts this year. So that's the challenge of doing something that goes like a project that goes faster than the way things work in government. And the last one, I told you about an incentive that we would give the finalists with the Center for Entrepreneurship in Mexico, that they're working to make a lot of small companies grow. But as I mentioned, the times for those resources were a bit complicated. So a year after we launched the challenges, we finally got the resources to pay these guys. We had emails every week saying hey, are you going to pay us? Is this like a scam? I mean, it's government, but is it a scam? So it was hard to say yeah, we're not exactly government. We're just trying to make it work for you, but we can't change that right now. So it's this one. Yeah. So where should we start then? First, we should start small with a specific issue to work on. So if it's buying software or exchanging stuff that governments have already and they don't communicate to do it, you just find something specific to do and work on that, and find the workarounds for it, because Retos is actually based on a very, it's actually a paragraph on the procurement law that says that if you make the tender process with a company that is this small, then you can do it in a different way. And you can justify the process by saying that you're promoting innovation and you're promoting a lot of different things that don't usually happen in government procurement. The second one is make sure everyone involved is aware of the change, especially those who pay. I told you about the delays we had. So if you're planning on changing procurement, you need to figure out where the money is going to come from, how they're going to pay for it. And especially since we're working with startups, they won't survive if we don't pay them on time. So we need to make sure that we can pay them because that's what's going to make them sustainable, as we mentioned. And finally, involve the people in the middle levels. We worked very closely with like general directors and like high-level people. And they all agreed. They were like, yeah, do that. Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Yeah, oh, prototypes, it works. But there's a story, like a really interesting story. In one of the prototype sessions, in the presentation of the prototypes, we had the guy that literally signs the checks to pay there. And he was really angry. He was like, what the hell are you, what's this? Why did you invite me to this? No one ever told him what was going on. So he came in to this session and he was like, okay, I'm going to stay for the first thing because I'm already here and my office is like 30 minutes away from here, so I'd rather just stay here and drink the free coffee. And he stayed for the first one. He saw the presentation, and as the first team left, we expected him to get out of the room and just leave, but he didn't. And then the second team came and presented. It was okay, and then the third one came. And I finally asked him, like, do you have to go? Are you going to stay? He's like, yeah, I'm going to check all this thing out. So the 5 teams presented, the session ended, and we were starting to talk about like paperwork that we had to do, and he interrupted everyone and said, like, sorry, do these prototypes belong to us? And she was like I was surprised, and I was like, yeah, no, not really. They're open source. Like, anyone can use them. And he was like, okay. And that website, like, that was a real website. I was like, yeah. And he looked at he asked, and that's the real amount that we're going to pay for that? And I was like, yeah. And he was so surprised about, like something exploded in his mind. And he just found out, and actually that's one of the challenges that has gone smoother in terms of contracting. Because this guy figured out that this would mean less headache for him, less paperwork for him, and that it would get him check on saving money for government. So he was middle-level public servant, so we should include him. But we want you to build your own program. So first, the platform is open source. Everything we do is open source, so you can just fork it and implement it whatever you want. And we're currently working on a playbook so that anyone can follow this recipe and not make the same mistakes we've made. It's going to probably be easier because the US has this US Small Business Administration, and I think they're in charge of doing stuff like this happen. I don't know how it works. So we actually want to hear from you because we want this to be a dialogue and not just hear us talking about how awesome our program is. So thank you very much. And now we can, that didn't work. That was a GIF, sorry. I don't trust PowerPoint. Sorry. Sorry, Microsoft. So anyone wants to share? This is a safe space.
So we didn't say the specific details, but we want to ask a ton of questions about this.
I don't think I did. Can you just talk a little bit about what the 10 contests were for? So like what was actually being procured?
Sure. Can you show our website?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, if actually PowerPoint, and Chrome should be in the bottom corner. Little shortcut there. And then you go ahead and type it in.
So you can go and they're all open RFPs basically. They are in the form of small challenges that, and for example, the first one we launched, it was how the government can respond to natural disasters and alert people. And there were small companies that do that in Mexico. They wanted adopt an official solution, and there were around 450 participants signed up, and we got 80 proposals in 30 days. So the way it works is basically the first 30 days you build on wireframes and mockups, and then basically the things that can support those mockups on your building process, the team who's behind that, and we invite specialists on different sites, especially on the subject of the project, and make them collaborate with the government to select the teams that will go through the prototype phase. So this was about natural disaster response. Consume Sano, it's about health and eating healthy. This agency wanted to promote a healthy diet on kids.
It's a game. You
So
have to
basically,
basically
the
build a
result-
game to teach kids how to eat healthy.
Yeah.
Because I think we're only more, no, I think we're fighting the US on being the most obese country. So
And the other one is, these are all different federal agencies. Descubriendo tu Ruta is about how can you show all the information on travel by federal highways to the people that is going to pass through points where they charge, and basically all the distance information and all the information about the highway system. Catalogarte, which is for how can you show all the work that is being shown right now in the official museums and art centers.
actually, that one's really cool because this one mainly works for the ministry, but it's, I think we can
you can
see
go
the,
and see the information of all the participants over there. You don't have to pay anything to get into and first get off the RFP, because the traditional system you have to pay right now to actually sign in and start seeing the RFPs. This is all open.
So they basically wanted to build catalogs easily. Yeah. And it's really easy. It's made on JavaScript. The developer for this is really cool, and he goes to our hack nights. And there's a funny story about this one. Like, when they saw how he was doing all of this, like he showed them the live demo of this, they were like, "Oh, but that looks like Photoshop. Like, am I gonna have to pay for that?" They didn't really understand that this was all like for them, and it was open source. And
Using open source. The thing about this is they invest the time in building this, that almost is, of course, more in different time than filling on documents and forms. But they actually enjoy the process of building this, and it's more collaborative in the way they communicate with the government.
Okay, so just real quick. So electricity and power is federal, like it's government run in Mexico. So they wanted to have a more direct contact to the people via an app. They're gonna use that to give a lot of information to people. They're working a lot with the company now. Corruption, I guess you've heard about corruption in Mexico. So that's a tool where you can, if you go to a government office and someone asks for a bribe or whatever, you can say, hey, this person asked for a bribe.
Right now,
so-
they can only call a phone anonymously and to report some kind of corruption. They wanted to do it differently, how they can do using digital tools. Those actually those a couple of challenges represent actually about the one about corruption. They don't have much participation. There are some challenges that have a ton of participation, some challenges that don't have that many participation or much participation,
You mean
because
participation by developers?
yeah, the developers and companies proposing, and it shows actually the amount of engagement that that agency has with the citizen. So it's really interesting to measure that as well.
Did you work with the government partner at the start of the project to refine the problem to something that can get tangible outcomes?
Yep.
Yeah, what we do that's also open. I mean, it's a Google Doc basically, and we hand it to them and say, okay, this is an example of how it can look. You just need to pick up a problem and build on it. So what happens sometimes is that they have so many problems that they want like big systems because they're also used to having big systems. So what we try to do is like say, okay, we can't fix everything. We need to pick like what's the most crucial part of this problem and start scaling from there. Because also the way these tools are built, since they're open source.
And use a lot of the agile philosophy. How you have this huge product backlog that you would design with this issue. So we need to break down first the issue to smaller issues and focus on the smallest one you can find, and start having wins from there.
Yep.
To build off that, maybe I'm clinging to my security blanket of requirements documents. How do you convey, I mean, do you include requirements like things have to be accessible to screen readers, to people that are visually impaired? Do you specify tools, like I don't want to have to support Drupal, so please don't build it in something complicated like Drupal. Do you give any requirements like that, or is it purely just like dream big and here's where we want to be? How do you balance that?
At the prototype phase, we involve that in the criteria so that people can know where we're going to focus on and specific details that we would like to, or the agency would like to take care of. The technology part, we have been very agnostic from there. And if someone wants to use a specific requirement for some kind of technology, we persuade them to change that, because we want systems to be more agnostic and to be actually can connect smaller applications or smaller results to bigger systems that they already have. They normally want to integrate everything in their system they have, and if that system is built on Java, they want a Java solution. So we say to them, okay, what do you need to build in your system or change that could work to integrate this? It's actually really interesting how can we develop that to recommend for the future, because this has been an active conversation. If we look for specific requirements, but we want to move from specific requirements to be more agnostic on that and reach reach more companies.
Also, Drupal is horrible, so we try to.
Hey, sorry.
Yeah.
Have you done anything around texting or WhatsApp, since internet connectivity is, it's not everywhere? Anything in that space?
The only one was the natural disaster response. It was based on other technologies, not just web technologies.
You said something about the turnover size of the companies that participate in the procurement. What is an indication of the size of the assignments? How many weeks or how many people are working on it?
Right now it's fixed. The first phase works for 30 days. The second phase works for 30 days as well. So the most amount of time you could invest in this would be the free time you have in 30 days, or the amount of time you want to invest in that time span. Putting more time, companies will invest more than maybe is needed to design the prototype.
But it's like 5 people working on it for 4 weeks?
It depends on the size of the company. Sometimes, like we've had participants, like individuals that
Yeah,
do
that-
everything themselves.
And it's so awesome to see how freelancers do sometimes better work than teams that form corporates that want to participate in here.
And do you see in that respect any future possibilities with bigger contracts?
Yeah, one of the goals for like the next stage is actually increasing the contracts. Like the problem is the entry barrier. To be a government provider, you have to be a government provider, and that makes it really hard for a lot of startups to become a provider. So once they have been hired via Retos, what we try to do is keep inviting them to like bigger contracts. And actually, there was a team that won a challenge. Like it was a guy with 2 other friends, and they won. And they started like a real company, and they're participating in another challenge. But they're also talking to their the ministry they worked with on scaling the project. So that would be a new contract, and that's actually what we want to achieve. Like get them in the loop and get them to run for something bigger, but stay agile, right?
I think there was another question here. Yeah.
Yeah, can you speak a little bit more about the advantages of requiring only companies underneath like 4 million in revenue and limiting the company size to that level for the competition?
In Mexico, that means that you're a micro company, and that amount of specific amount. So we wanted to focus on that market of companies at first. I think the future involves getting to be a more inclusive program, and we wanted to test first how it works and discover new talent that wouldn't have any opportunity competing to bigger companies. So we focus on that specific market of companies. So the future, in the really close future, we want to go to small companies, small businesses, and medium businesses in Mexico, and start going for bigger contracts. How can we put more budget and allocate more budget on this program, and to be a little bit more ambitious on the solutions that you can design in this model.
Also, how can we map this, the process that we showed, this thing? There. That process is basically what any tender process is, except government isn't used to this. So if we're currently working also on making the administrative changes so that this maps to a real, like a regular tender, so that we can skip and just sign a paper that says, okay, this was this, this was the RFP. This was the selection of the best bids. This was like we already had a budget, so we don't really care about the budget they present. We know that all of this is going to cost the same. Like, how can we map this to match the regular process? Yeah.
And we were talking a little bit earlier about how to fix first the way companies participate. Now we need to fix the back end of how the administrative work and the model on the back end would work. This is USAID is financing public policy study around the project to actually build the recommendations for the government to implement on this. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the evaluation, and then why are the best ideas the best? What is the criteria? But also, who does the evaluation? How do you select the best ideas?
That's a really good question. And right now, the criteria is built on recommendations that started from us and then started to build on by the specialists we invited. And there has been people from civil society, from private companies that are not even based in Mexico, but there are Mexicans that want to contribute. And the evaluation criteria is built on the specific goals that the solution needs to solve, the amount of innovation that it involves, that if it could be viable to actually build on, and the other one is about the design and user experience that both for the different users that could serve. And the committee and evaluation committee for each challenge is built on recommendations that we do as well. And as I mentioned, that can be even web developers that work on Google, or web developers that work on Microsoft, or a person from civil society that works on transparency, or a specialist that works on natural disaster response. And it's we invited over the platform, and they do remotely the evaluations of every proposal that gets to a challenge. And it spent around from 8 to 10 hours doing the evaluation. And right now, through the platform, it's really transparent the way the participants get the results and the feedback. So it's really interesting in how can we improve this, because in the future, this can work right now for 10 RFPs, but in the future, how it will work for 50 or 60, we will need to involve more people from different companies and different organizations to actually scale.
Also government.
And government.
So there's, like, in the middle of the selection of the 5 finalists, like that number 2 means government officials look at the top 10 of the evaluations and say, like, okay, this makes sense. This doesn't make sense because we couldn't connect to our current systems right now. So that doesn't get enough points. So, we try to balance it with experts in technology, but also the people that are actually going to use it. And those people are the ones that also evaluate the prototypes. Like, once they saw how it could be, they also see how it actually works. So we try to involve them as much as we can.
Two-part question, if I'm understanding correctly. When you guys launched the competition, you previously have worked with an agency and we go forth and do this, so they've outlined the needs. Are you seeking because they have to be willing to then review those 5 and do something with it? So often
Yeah.
that various changes, perhaps finding that champion, inside, and how have you gone about doing that? What hasn't worked?
Okay. So the way it's worked now, till now, has been the president's office goes to, like, agencies that are important to them. So disaster response is really important. So that's why they started with that. And they invite them and they get the champions, like, easily, right? That hasn't been very sustainable because of what we mentioned, like the communication between them and us that are doing all the process has been complicated. And also, the thing is, the president's office can't really do much by law. Like, they can't engage in a lot of decision making with the ministries. So,
but that's that partnership with the National Digital Strategy in Mexico helped us to reach different champions within the agencies. So definitely has worked that part as Oscar mentioned, we think that that's not the future, because the future needs to be where the priorities of not the national digital strategy just for them, but to different agencies within the country.
Yeah. So right now, what we are trying to do is invite as many as we can to this workshop that we've been planning for the last year, and teach them how this will make their lives easier, how this will make them spend less time and money, and like make the government partners that we've had speak about their own experience. I think that's the most powerful thing. Once someone from inside government talks to someone else in government, they get convinced, because they have the same issues, and sometimes they have to go through the same processes to procure. So I think that's what we expect to work. We'll keep you posted.
Did we solve your question? Yeah, great. We're gonna have I think a couple more questions. I would like to know, to actually you throwing at us and at everyone, what doesn't work about this and why you think this wouldn't work in your country or state or municipality. Would really like to know that kind of feedback. Yep.
I have a suggestion actually.
Yeah.
I was in government in Puerto Rico and I did a procurement for revising of a website for handling complaints for environmental problems. I was able to do it at half the previous budget, but there's no way for me to advertise that. There's no way for me to get any recognition for that. And it's very hard because I realize one of the problems is that if you're in procurement and you do a good job, you have zero visibility. If you do a bad job and you'll get a kickback from someone, and that will help you in some way, right? But if you're a good guy doing a good job, you're anonymous, and no one can recognize you for it. But someone like you guys are in a good position to seeing that kind of stuff, giving an award, even if it's just a paper award, where you go, this person did a good job, you bring visibility to that person feels like they did it.
That's an awesome. Yeah.
Makes a good thing, and that could be something that'll help, like from the office of the president, where you may not be able to have impact on how the procurement, it can bring a spotlight on the people who are doing a good job, and maybe some sort of impact on their decision making.
Yeah, totally.
It's an awesome suggestion, and I think we should implement it very soon. It's really, really important. And the people that have been partnered, like from each agency, definitely feel sometimes, as we mentioned, once they receive the solutions and the prototypes, they feel really happy, but they don't know what to do with it. So it's really important that we just not empower and give them like really clear next steps on how to manage this, but recognition, definitely.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is a question. I hope that's okay before you preface. But so two things. One is that we really our civic tech community really wants to replicate this. So we're wondering one, what is the sort of process for that, and then two, kind of to your point about visibility is, do you guys have a sense of, or do you have any hard measurements or key data points that you're following to say this?
Yeah, replicating, you just need to fork the platform, and
For us, but then how do you get the city to adopt it? That's sort of what I'm wondering.
No,
that's a great question. No, I mean, most cities are working on innovation and on bringing more civic hackers into collaborating, right? And Code for Philly is doing a great job. So I think what we learned from our experiences, there are key things that happen in a city or in a community or in a country that allow you to get the subject into the mainstream. So I guess it's that. Like procurement is so normal that it's not actually like something visible. So the first thing would be make it visible some way, and there will probably be someone from inside government that will say, "Hey, this sounds great. Like we should fix this," because they work on that. Like that's their job, and they probably want to do a better job.
And find someone that wants to procure something in some way, and if you find them, you can propose this in a way that the organization outside the government can help manage that. But what we first did before implementing Retos Públicos, we helped the national digital strategy to launch one challenge. In this way, I mean, the first story that we told was completely separated from the government. Then they invited us. But in the second experiment we did was actually in partnership with one agency that manages the taxation process and all the taxes in Mexico, basically. And
IRS.
The national IRS, National Digital Strategy. And that experiment helped them see how it could work. It was not even using a government platform. It was using our platform outside the government with our image. And that was actually the trigger that helped them engage more in working with us and help them establish like a longer partnership. Yep.
So one thing about what you were saying, sometimes going to departments that are not necessarily obvious, like for example, you think, oh, you should take this to procurement department. That's probably not the place you should go. Maybe the Economic Development Authority might be very interested in developing the local startup community, so they might have a strong incentive from the community that they're serving and from the government side to make this happen. For example, in Portland, the Portland Development Commission, I think it's called, they launched a thing called Switchboard where people can just, from the government, post issues that they have, but more importantly, startups can post offers proactively. And this was launched by the Economic Development Authority, so that could be an incentive for them too.
Yeah, it's weird. There's actually a ton of political will in Philly to do this. Like, Stephanie is also in city government in Philly, but like, there's actually a ton of political will to do this and use technology for these kinds of platforms. But there's kind of two responses that come up a lot, in which procurement's too complicated. It's too complicated to do something like this, and the structures are very immovable in a lot of, like, even for the people working within government, which is kind of interesting. So there's still a barrier there.
Okay.
We can talk later.
No, I think we should not. Like this is the moment actually, because I think we're all interested in procurement in some way here, and we don't think we have the answers to all the questions, sadly. So I think there's a lot of knowledge here that can be shared. So
I think that it.
we have like.
30 seconds.
So
all right,
we should keep talking
I saw
somewhere
like
else.
3 more raised hands, but if you want, we can chat on the hall over a coffee. And thank you all for being here and ask these really great questions and engage in the conversation. For us, this is an ongoing experiment. It has a little bit more than 1 year, and I think we can grow the activity and work in more companies. 350 right now with the new challenge in Mexico have attracted in this program. We definitely need to discover more talent and new players that need to come to this field in an easier way and more attractive. Thank you.
Thank you very much.